Welcome back to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch journey. I'm your host, Jess Sabanko, and I can't wait to share my thoughts on one of my favorite shows with you. I'll be keeping these recaps spoiler-free and welcome fans, new and old, to join me on my journey here and on social media at Rewitched_pod on Instagram and TikTok. Currently, I'm on season 7. All right, so this week we're talking about season 7, episode 20, Imaginary Fiends. Another really enjoyable episode. I really loved this one. I love the focus on Wyatt and his relationship with his parents. I also want to mention that going into this season, I was convinced that I was finally going to hop on the Leo hate train. But I don't know, guys. I think I'm a Leo apologist. Like, he's made mistakes that I've called him out for over the course of the series. The sisters have made mistakes that I've called them out for too. But I do think at the end of the day, his connection with Piper, his connection with his sons is really strong. And I do enjoy seeing them together. And I don't know, he had me tearing up at the end of this episode. Like, I love Leo. I really like this storyline, the way things have developed. Again, I haven't always been happy with him, and I haha at the little jokes online about how he's like broke and stuff. But I don't know, I think he's a good dad, and I think he's a good person. He wasn't always the best partner to Piper, but I think they always find their way back and figure things out. But anyway, aside from that, in terms of the innocents and villains this week, as our villain, we do have the demon Vicus. As our innocents, we have primarily little Wyatt, but also the sisters. And we do have, of course, an appearance by evil Wyatt as well. To very quickly cover Paige and Phoebe's kind of side storylines. So for Phoebe, we see that she is back in college, which she talked about last episode. She does have a disagreement with her professor when she goes for advice about Wyatt and his imaginary friend, who's like, you're just asking me for this for your column and you don't even cite me. Like, I saw that what we talked about in the last lecture was in your paper as like a little one-liner. I don't like that. Basically calling out Phoebe as a fraud and like being in school for the wrong reasons. And Phoebe's like, no, like I came here to learn so that I can be a better columnist and understand human nature. Like, that's why I wanted to do this. And then she writes her paper on the topic. Her professor actually approaches her at the end of the episode saying that she loved the paper. She got an A-. She found it really insightful, and that she's actually wants to apologize, that she's looking forward to reading not only her next paper but her next column, which Phoebe obviously seems very happy to have because she was obviously upset that her professor felt that way about her. So I did enjoy that interaction. I thought it was really cute. In terms of Paige, so we do see that she's taken on another charge. She's a little bit kind of like torn between finding the balance between being a charmed one and being a whitelighter at the same time. Her new charge is from New Zealand, is Maori, and she's speaking the language and she's, enjoying things about it, but also like very stressed that all this demon stuff is going on at the same time. And even asks like Wyatt, like, do I ever figure this out? And he's like, that's so funny because I learned how to be a whitelighter from you. And also says that like she's the one that taught him that what's meant to be happens basically. And Paige, seeing that she does grow to be like more insightful and more understanding of like this balance, I think she'll get there. I already had that feeling, but I do understand her stress in this new development in her life, and I think it is interesting to see how it impacts her relationships with her sisters, because even when Piper's like, oh yeah, like Wyatt's at preschool, and Paige is like, what the fuck, you never talked to me about that. She's like, yeah, I did, and you were like, what if he uses magic? And she's like, oh right, like yeah, I'm too like torn between things right now. So I do like the way that that's happening. Also the way that she's picking up on the fact that when the phone rings, demons are coming, and then we find out it's when the preschool rings, which then gets us into our main storyline. So in this episode, like I mentioned, Piper, in an attempt to push that semi-normal life for herself and her family, has enrolled Wyatt in preschool. He is having imaginary friend and only talking to himself, which the teacher had called to tell her about, but also said like it wasn't a big deal. Leo then shows up there, and we quickly learn that the imaginary friend is actually a demon who only Wyatt can see, who's trying to get hold of his teddy bear. He asks asks for it in every single scene we see him. And the demon reminds Wyatt that he's a secret friend and that he'll come back to see him later, that he can trust him. Now, obviously here there are very sinister implications that I don't want to dig too much into about adults going behind a parent's back and asking children to keep secrets. It's very, very dark, and it does make for an interesting point of then comparing this to how a demon would entice a child into becoming evil. So it is really interesting that they play on some of those tropes, but also very disturbing. In terms of that actual storyline developing, stepping away from that insight, I do think that the way that we then see Leo and Piper kind of picking up on something being off, Phoebe being like, oh, like maybe his problems aren't magical, maybe it's just like normal development, that he's like struggling with the adjustment to preschool. Because initially Piper's like, this is happening when the preschool calls, and Paige is like, well, maybe like Wyatt is the one creating these demons. It would seem why they are using what appear to be good powers. Piper's like, no, like why the fuck would you say that? And they're like, oh, you remember the dragon? And she's like, that was one time, but then later brings up the fact that he also created a demon to kidnap him. So like Wyatt is starting to have more and more instances of this, so it makes sense that they would suspect that he's the one causing it. Then Piper comes up with this idea to cast a spell in order to communicate with Wyatt, because she and Leo are talking and she's like, I wish I could just ask him. So she does a spell which then conjures up adult Wyatt, who's 25 years old, very happy to see them. He's like, oh my god, like Mom and Paige, and talking about how like he got his optimism from Piper, which is really funny considering what we know about her. And Paige is like, oh, maybe you turn over a new leaf in the future. And she's like, don't count on it. We see that Phoebe's kind of like, oh my god, like who is this? And then asking like questions about whether she has a child in the future, and Piper's like, don't answer that, good try. But they do end up going up where they go into Wyatt's room, first just adult Wyatt, and notice there's a man in there talking to him, and then that the rest of the family doesn't see him. So back at the lair where Vicus hangs out, we see that his other demons are kind of questioning things at this point because so many of them have been vanquished, being sent to distract the charmed ones while Vicus is talking to Wyatt. He says that it's all worth it, that Wyatt's going to be the most powerful witch of all time, and basically that they want him on their side. We find out that Vicus is a demon who lures children to evil in order to gain their powers. He has this collective that he works with of all these children that he's turned, and obviously Wyatt is now his target, and they're like, look, we can just like forget about him, but Vicus is not willing to give up and keeps sending more and more of his minions, whatever we want to call them, after the charmed ones. We also see him then after the interaction with adult Wyatt questioning things, because he's like, I did a spell that only Wyatt could see me. Then he quickly figures out it must be Wyatt from the future, and the other demon's kind of like, hey, like, doesn't that mean we fail? He's like, no, actually, we can go back, you guys distract the sisters, and I'll turn him and we could see it happen in real time. So we do go back to the manor where the sisters are in the attic with adult Wyatt, and Leo is down in the kitchen with the boys, just as they found Vicus in the Book of Shadows, because at first they're like, maybe it's not a demon, like maybe it really is like an imaginary friend, and Piper's like, no, that doesn't make any sense, and then convinces adult Wyatt to look in the book and find him, which they do. Two demons show up, they start fighting, they're kind of winning, but then adult Wyatt is like, enough, leave my family alone, and like moves his hands, and this like power comes out that just vanquishes them instantly. Like, it's really badass, it's really cool. Downstairs, Leo's kind of like, oh, like, let me go check on your mom, and like leaves the boys for a second, is out in the hall. As all this is going on, he's like, are you guys good? Piper says she's fine. He walks back into the kitchen just as Vicus has finally convinced Wyatt to give him the bear. He sees the bear floating, glow red, and then get handed back to Wyatt. He's like, no, Wyatt, don't touch it, but he does take it back. And then just as adult Wyatt orbs down to him to see what's wrong, he turns into evil Wyatt. And then Vicus is like, follow me. They go back to the lair. They have this conversation where he's like, I can't believe I was good for so long, all this stuff. And then talking about his plans to potentially kill the charmed ones. And so he's like, let's lure them here. We don't want to go to the manor, like they're too powerful there, but we can do that, and then we can get to little me. So that's kind kind of the plan they come up with. But back at the manor, the plan the sisters have come up with is that Paige and Phoebe will go after Vicus, to thinking that if they vanquish him, Wyatt will turn back to good and maybe they won't have to undo the curse. And then Piper and Leo go to magic school to see what they can figure out. As they're doing research, they realize that like cursed objects, maybe they could do spells. They try a bunch, but then Leo's kind of like, look, it was more than just the spell, because if that was the case, he would have just done it right away to the bear. But instead, he had to gain Wyatt's trust. Maybe we have to do the same thing, because Piper's kind of like, he doesn't seem any different, like he still seems good, but with these cursed objects, it takes time for it to go into effect. So by the time he's 25, it would be very different. We then see when the sisters do scry and find Wyatt and Vicus, they're kind of like, look, like tell us where he is, like we still believe you're good, because he's like, why do you have all those potions if you're not here to hurt me? They're like, they're for Vicus. And so they start throwing random potions around, and then Wyatt kind of like reveals Vicus, and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, proving my point, and lets them vanquish him, and Liz like, see, like I actually just am evil, whatever. And then summoned all the other members of the collective to distract the sisters while he goes to Piper and Leo at magic school and is kind of like, I'm here to take little me so that you guys can't try to change me back. And so he first tries to go for the Book of Shadows, isn't able to touch it because he's evil now and is very surprised by that, but then is able to dark orb out with his younger self, which obviously they're very upset about. Back at the manor, Phoebe is talking about how they barely made it out of the fight alive. Paige thinks that Wyatt was just trying to distract them, because even when they went in at first, Paige was the one who was worried Wyatt might try to kill them, and Phoebe was like, no, like I don't think he would do that. They have a little bit of a reversal in this scene. Then they start having the bigger discussion about what their plan should be, because they are able to scry for him very easily, and everyone except for Piper is kind of like, this is a trap, we can't do that. And then they're like, well, what if we set a trap for him here with the book, because that's obviously what he's going to be coming after. They're not 100% sure, because they're like, that could be dangerous. He's obviously very powerful. And Leo's like, well, he won't come to the manor with you guys here. Like, it's too much of a risk. So I have to be the one here. Like, I'll be here with the book and then deal with it. And they're like, no, like, you don't have any powers. He's like, look, just because I don't have any powers doesn't mean I'm powerless. Like, I'm his father. I can get through to him. And then I do want to read from the scene between the two of them, because I do think it's really beautiful. So the sisters do leave. They're like, we're only a call away, and orb out. And he goes up to the attic with the book, sets it on the little stand that it's always on, and then is waiting. And both Wyatts come in, and adult Wyatt tells little Wyatt to go get the book from him. Leo walks out and he says, come on, Dad, you don't even have any powers. So what are you gonna do? And Leo's like, I don't need to do anything. You're gonna stop yourself. And then he starts talking about how there's good in his heart and he knows him, and there's good in little Wyatt's soul. Then he kind of kneels down and starts talking to little Wyatt, and adult Wyatt yells at him to get the book, and Leo tells him that he doesn't have to and can come over to him instead. And then adult Wyatt is like, Dad, seriously, I don't want to have to hurt you, but if you get in my way. And Leo doesn't really believe it and goes over to little Wyatt asking for the bear. Adult Wyatt says he'll kill him, and Leo says, I don't think you will. I was there when you were born, Wyatt. I gave up my powers for you. I tried to change the world for you, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. And you want to know why? Because I'm your father. You want to kill me? Go ahead. I gave up my life for you before. And he's like, Dad, please. And you can see like tears in his eyes. It's really moving. And he says, look, I love you. Do you understand what that means? And then he goes back to little Wyatt asking for the bear and saying, look, just for a second, like, just trust me, I'll give it back to you. Little Wyatt does give it to him. It glows yellow and he gives it back to him. We then see adult Wyatt shift back into his good self. The two of them hug. It's a really nice father-son moment. I was so touched by this scene. It really does remind us, again, like I was talking about at the beginning, how much Leo does sacrifice and care for his family. Like I said, he's made some bad decisions, but a lot of it was the purpose of either trying to fight for the greater good or trying to fight for the people he loves most. And I can't really fault him for that, because I do understand that, and I do think it's actually really admirable. And so I love this scene between father and son, where he, the one without powers, is able to bring him back. I thought that that was really sweet, and I thought that it was a really beautiful scene. And I love seeing strong connections between fathers and children. So the way this storyline wraps up, obviously that is now solved. We then have them sending him back to the future, and we have this really cute wrap-up scene where he basically thanks Paige for everything she'll do for him, thanks Leo for saving him, tells Piper not to worry about him so much, and she's kind of like, yeah, that's never gonna change. And also tells Phoebe to save her imaginary friend's paper for his future little cousin, so giving her that hint that she will have that baby she wants. So yeah, like I said, really enjoyable episode, really great family dynamic episode. I really love seeing the care that they all obviously have for Wyatt, and the way that Piper really does worry about, like, hey, we've done all of this to try to protect him and there's still this chance that he could turn evil. And the way Leo is kind of like, look, the only thing we could do is try to be good influences and see what happens. And then showing that Leo being that good influence, being someone that Wyatt can trust is what saves him, was really effective to me. So yeah, I loved this episode. But that is all I have for this one, and I hope you'll join me back next time.